Hello, Facebook. It is Suzanne Hart here. And I'm going to be waiting a few minutes to give people an opportunity to join in. So welcome to this episode of Fit, Fab, and Fulfilled. And we are going to be talking today about communication mastery. So this is one of my favorite levels of mastery. And we'll be telling you a little bit about what that's about and how having a high level of communication mastery can absolutely change the impact you have in the marketplace. Our topic today is unleash the power of your story. Oh my goodness, hello, Dawn. How are you? Miss Dawn Macon, good to see you. And welcome, Taria. So as usual, my name is Suzanne Hart. And I want to welcome you to this week's episode, Unleash the Power of Your Story. And as you join in, now, whether you are joining online live or whether you are joining in and listening to the replay, I want you to do two things. One is I'm going to ask you to let us know who you are. So your name, of course, it always pops up, but what you do and where you're connecting from. So where do you live? What do you do? Why do we do that? Because this is social media and this is an opportunity for you to let people know what you do, what you're passionate about, what your business is, what your career is, because people scroll all the time and you never know who is looking for you. And if someone's looking for you, you want to make sure they know exactly where to find you and exactly what you do. So please do that, even if you're listening to the replay, but definitely do that if you are live. And don't be shy. I invite people to do it every time. A few people do. They take advantage of the opportunity. And I know we've had some connections. I know, Taria, you've had people connect with you as a result of you're always posting who you are, where you're from, and what you do that inspires you. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to really begin to share. And I see Miss Deborah chiming in. Deborah was our guest last week on Mindset Mastery and another communication mastery. Her topic was the power of word. This girl knocked it out of the park. So Deborah from Creative Consulting Services. Deborah, definitely put your information in the comment section so people will be reminded of where to reach out to you. Welcome. So the other thing I'm going to ask you to do is share. Right? Bless a life, because as we know, knowledge is power, and knowledge is power, one, when we implement it into our lives. So don't just take this knowledge and sit on it. My goal is for you to take action, even if you do one thing differently that you learn from the video. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to bless a life, because knowledge is more powerful when we share it and when we teach it. Thank you, Taria. She just put a little bit of information about what she does. So check my girl out, because she's magical. This is a strategist. If you're looking for social media, this is a strategist right there. Thank you, Taria, for putting your information in the comment section. So definitely bless a life and let people know, this is something you really want. So this is who this is for today. If you know someone who's an entrepreneur, a business professional, a leader, and they are going to be doing presentations, they are in sales, and they want to know how to unleash the power of their story. In other words, how to use their life story as a way to edify themselves and to build credibility. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We all have stories, we all have experience, and we're going to be talking about the power of that. So please do bless a life. And I'm grateful every time this information is shared. And yeah, for sure. So that's what's happening. I see Cindy chiming in, Dawn making it so wonderful to see you. I haven't heard you in a while. So I'm glad that you're joining us. I know people will begin to chime in as we get this topic going. So this is one of my favorite topics, and I'll tell you why. Unleash the power of your story is one of my favorite topics because I didn't used to talk about my story. I'm from the islands, and if you know anything about anyone that's raised in the islands, I'm from the island of Trinidad. That what happens in your life is private, right? We don't share it. And one of the things I began to realize is what happens in my life is private. But if I learn how to share it in the most respectful way, it is powerful and it can bless, touch, and inspire other lives and inspire people for change, action, to do something different, to change the way they see the world. It is so powerful. So we're going to talk a little bit about unleashing the power of your story. And why? Because every single person listening has a story. We actually have many stories, but we have stories that really speak to who we are in the world, and it actually builds credibility. So why do I want to talk about stories? Because what I found is that a story is one of the best ways to edify yourself, to build credibility without actually bragging. Think about it. Without actually saying, oh, I accomplished this, I have this degree, I have that, I have all those different things. When we start to storytell, it really tells people a lot about us, who we are. It really speaks to our character, what we've accomplished. Now, why is that the case? The real reason is people are less interested in where you've arrived. So, you'll meet people and they'll talk about success, my success, my success, my success, my success. And I always, when I teach this, I say, if you met Suzanne and Suzanne was just perfect and Suzanne had the perfect life, she had the perfect everything, the perfect relationship, the perfect car, nothing ever went wrong in Suzanne's life, you guys wouldn't be interested in me for two reasons. One is I'd seem too perfect, and everybody privately knows that you're not perfect. And I would seem a little plastic and untouchable. There would be a lot of distance between me and you because that's not relatable, right? And I remember when I first started presenting and I first started doing things in the public, I strived for perfection. And what happened was the audience didn't connect with me because I was too polished, I was too perfect, and I never shared much about myself. I presented. And what happened was I was unrelatable. So the question was, what was missing? Well, what was missing was me. What was missing was my humanity. What was missing was me being imperfect, because we all are imperfect. So the reason stories work is because when you share your journey of your ups and downs, people can relate to you. And this is why. Everybody in life has had a moment where life has come down their street, knocked them over, backed up on them, and they're laying there going, what the heck happened? And everybody's had that struggle to overcome and get up and keep it moving. What inspires us is when we meet people who actually have been knocked down and they've had the courage not only to get up, but to move, change, grow, and make something out of that situation. Why? Because we like people who've moved from the victim of life to the hero in their own life. So I'll give you a great example to really drive this home. We like movies for a very clear reason. And this is a movie unleashes the power of a story in a character's life. So usually a movie starts and we meet Bob. And Bob probably lives in the beautiful neighborhood. He has the great job. And we're getting acquainted with Bob and we're like, well, Bob has a great life. And then usually in the movie, what happens is something catastrophic, horrific, unexpected happens to Bob that kind of knocks him off his feet. And we are devastated. We are, oh my gosh, I can't believe this has happened. And in many ways we relate because all of us have had something that happened that kind of knocks us off our feet. And usually in the movie, Bob becomes a victim of his circumstances. He's in struggle, he's challenged, he's upset, he's angry. And we see Bob go through his own personal pity party and we can relate, right? Because we understand what's going on. He's being human. But then usually what happens is Bob has an experience. So when I like to tell the story, I'm like, Bob is laying in the hospital after something has happened to him, and he's looking up the ceiling and feeling very sorry for himself. And his wife comes to visit him with his two young children, and he's despondent. He's not interactive. But his little girl looks him in the eyes and goes, "Daddy, when are you coming home?" And Daddy doesn't have an answer, but the question from his daughter moves Bob. And suddenly Bob's like, I have to get home. I can't abandon my family. And suddenly there's that moment in Bob's life where everything changes. And he makes a decision that the circumstances that he's living is not going to get the better of him. And he moves from victim to the beginning of the emerging hero. And usually in most movies, we see Bob overcome challenges. We see Bob, be often sometimes superhuman. We see Bob beat all odds. And it's those moments that we start rooting for Bob. And in rooting for Bob, we're actually rooting for ourselves, because we actually see a piece of us in Bob. And we are inspired, and sometimes it brings us to tears. Sometimes it inspires us. Sometimes it gives us hope. And what happens is we identify with Bob, and we're like, "Go, Bob! You can do this." And I often joke that Bob could rob a bank. He could do all sorts of things, but we're so identified with where Bob has been, what he's been through, and where he's going, that we're like, "Rob that bank." And we're rooting for him. And why that happens is because we are more interested in not where you've arrived, but where you started, how you fell, how you got back up, and who you were required to be and become in order to move into the new phase of your life and become the hero. Now, why this is so impressive is because usually in the middle of this transformation, people go through all the steps in mastery. They have to develop emotional mastery. They have to develop new habits. They have to silence the voice in their head that says, you can't, this is too hard. So communication mastery, right? They have to shift their thinking. And all those things inspire us because they're becoming a person of inspiration. They're becoming a person that we all aspire to be. And so when you tell stories that move you from this place of adversity to a place where you are the hero in your life, people become inspired. But what it also does is it gives them a glimpse into who you were and the character you were required to develop in order to create this success. So, how many people have had an incident in their life, a situation that has impacted you in such a way that you felt like you were laying in the middle of the street on your back, just devastated by life? Just put a comment, put a yes, it's happened to me in the comment section. And then how many of you have actually had yourself get up, brush yourself off, have your little pity party, and then say, enough is enough. And once you've made that decision, you've gone on a journey of transformation that has had you arrive in a place that actually inspired you. That's the power of story, because when you learn to share that story with an audience, with a client that you're connecting with any individual, it moves them. But what it does is it edifies you and actually shows people your heart. It shows them your courage. It shows them your tenacity. And it shows them things that are probably not related to your products and services, but it shows them who you are. And why stories work is because I am required to buy you. You are required to buy me before you'll do business with me, before you'll use my product, my service, before you'll say, I know, like, and trust this person. Deborah saying, and yes, yes, absolutely, right? That is what's required to happen in order for me to say, yes, I want to go on this journey. And stories are the best way to do this. Now, if you were listening to Deborah last week, she brilliantly told us that every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I really want to just continue that dialogue, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And why, when you unleash the power of your story and you speak your story, it works, is if you understand the power of the beginning, the middle, and the end. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that. And I'm going to walk you through with my story. And I'm going to share the story that I've been telling for 16 years. It is the story that I told on my network marketing journey. And this story has made me some serious income. Now, why this story works is because when people hear it, they can relate to it, right? So let's talk about the beginning of my story, right? And usually when I start, I'm going to say, I'm going to tell you a story about my journey to where I am today. And I usually go, would that be okay? And the audience goes, absolutely. The person on the phone will go, absolutely. And I'll usually start and I'll say, my story begins about 16 years ago. I was living in the city of Toronto and I was managing one of the largest drop-ins in the downtown core of the city. I was the crisis manager and I absolutely loved my job. But my job required that I worked long hours. I traveled an hour to work, I traveled an hour from work. And we saw women who were homeless and living on the streets. We saw women who had mental health issues and were not medicating. We saw women who had addictions issues and possibly were still using. And I managed what I would call the crisis team, about 30 staff. And our environment was hopping. I loved it because no day was ever the same. It was actually a very high stress job. Now, how that working in that environment occurred for me is it began to take a toll on my health. And it started by me beginning to lose weight. It started by me getting a little bit of mental fog. But the clincher was it didn't matter how much I slept. I never ever woke up rested, right? I remember being at home, being at work one day and having to climb 4 stairs and literally fighting the tears because I no longer had the energy to move myself up a flight of stairs. Now, I was in crisis. And what was so embarrassing was that I was the crisis manager. And here I was, unable to lead my team because I didn't have the energy. And I was literally in crisis. On the home front, I was in a marriage that was failing due to financial stresses. We were $50,000 upside down in credit card debt. At one point, we had a lien, on our house, and I was literally suffering in silence. Every day I would go out into the world, I put on the brave face, but nights were sleepless. I was truly, truly suffering. Right now, that's the beginning of my story. If I were to use a phrase coined by Dr. Venus Opal Reese, that was my mess. Right, my life was a hot mess. Now, why I share that is how many people have had financial struggles. How many people that are listening have been exhausted and still have to keep going? How many people have had sleepless nights? How many people are suffering in silence? How many people have been financially upside down? All the things in my story, if you're listening, you're like, that's me, that's me, that's me. That's me. So the beginning of my story, I'm creating connection. Now, how many of you just listening can identify with something I said? Hello, Constance. How are you? Right? How many of you listening can totally relate to something I said? Right? And yeah, because we've all had some of those experiences. So what's happening is I'm creating a relatedness with the audience. And really what I'm saying is I understand where you are, if that is you, because I have been there too. Right? That's what that part of the story says. And the story creates a level of intimacy. And most people are like, oh my gosh, she's sharing my story. She's sharing it's, and I've had people go, I thought you were talking to me. I thought you knew me. That is exactly my story. So I'm creating relationship, right? Relatedness. I'm connecting with my audience. Cindy's saying I definitely can relate. Now, Now, this is the important thing. If I had left my story right there and I kept going on and on and on, I would still be a victim and I'd still be in pity party. And after a while, if I continue telling that part of my story, the beginning, people would go, can we get to the end? Right? And or they'd switch the channel if I was a TV show. But this is where it gets really interesting. So I'm going to go to the middle of my story. I'm going to go to where a decision is made. I'm going to go to a little bit of more content, right? So what happened for me was the reality was in the middle of my suffering, I was also going back and forth to my doctor because I truly thought that something was wrong with me, right? Because as I said, no matter how much I slept, I never woke up feeling rested. By now, I'm about 12 pounds underweight and I have mental fog. I can't concentrate. I can cry at the drop of a hat or I can yell at you. I want to avoid everything. And weekends, I just wanted to go home, go under the covers and sleep. I was on the brink of burnout, but actually didn't know it. So here I am one day. I'm sitting in my doctor's office and he has run some tests and he comes back and he says, Suzanne, you're healthy, you're fine. And I literally look at him and I want to pounce on him because now I'm mad because he doesn't have an answer for me. And I tell him that can't be right. And he looks at me and he says, Suzanne, you're healthy, but you're not well. And I went, what? And he said, you're healthy, but you're not well. And that was the first time. Now, remember, I do mindset mastery, right? So this is the beginning of me kind of talking about my learn. That was the first time I ever heard that there was a difference between health and wellness. And I didn't really understand what he was talking about. And then he said to me, you're healthy, your vitals are fine, internally you're fine. But your wellness, the way you're living life, the amount of stress that you're under, you will not make it if you continue to live life that way. And I'm listening to him, and now the tears are flowing, and I am like, oh my goodness, I'm doing this to myself. My lifestyle is having me feel anything but well. And on top of that, my doctor's saying, if you continue the way you're going, you won't make it. Now, I'm not exactly sure what he means, but I don't really need to have more information because that was enough. So now I go home, and after having a cry, after having probably a temper tantrum, after feeling sorry for myself, I decide something has to change. Now I'm going to stop here so you guys get this. In this moment, I am giving up being a victim. I'm giving up poor me. And I'm actually in the beginning of my transformation. Something has to change. So I start praying for an answer. So here I am, I'm continuing my story. I start praying for an answer. And it's interesting that when the student is ready, the teacher actually shows up. And one day I get a call from my friend Susan Sly. And she tells me about this company that she had found that she thought was going to help me reclaim my health, but it was also going to help me generate wealth. Now, remember, I'm $50,000 upside down in credit card debt and a lot going on. And like anybody does, when an answer is proposed to them, I tell her, no, honey, I'm fine. And I hang up the phone. Luckily for me, she continues to call. She calls once, she calls twice, she calls 3 times, she calls 4 times. The woman called me 7 times. And now I realize she's not going anywhere. So I decide to take a look at the information. Now I'll say to you that what she was offering was my own personal miracle. But I wasn't ready to receive it because the miracle never shows up in the package you expected. Mine showed up in a phone call and a brown box on my doorstep with a bunch of products that shifted the quality of my life. Right? So after doing my research, I decided to say yes. I did my first program and my energy went through the roof. My skin got healthy. I got my bounce back. On day 4, I literally woke up. It felt like I was plugged into an electrical socket. I had done my first program and I was ready to take on the world. Now, I actually didn't think anybody would notice, but when I went to work, people were like, what is going on with you? Why do you look so good? They were asking me why my eyes were so white, why my skin was glowing, why I had a newfound pep in my step. And what was interesting was people wanted to know what I was doing and where they could get it. Now, that is the middle of my story. And I'm now telling you, I have made a decision. right? Now, if you're listening to it, you're like, oh my gosh, she decided to change her life. Now, in the story, I also tell people I quit my job and I jump in with both feet because I'm done. And my doctors told me something has to change, right? So, people, if you're listening and you've got the privilege of the whole story, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she quit her job, she sold her house, and she started anew. Really, because that's what I tell you in my story. And that's the middle, that is the content, that is the stuff, right? And then I'll go on to tell you that, you know, as I went on this journey, I learned things about my mindset, and I learned that I was required to take responsibility for my life, right? I learned that I actually didn't understand what wealth was. I knew what it was like to trade time for dollars, but I really didn't understand wealth, and that's why I was upside down. So I began to educate myself on this whole process of leverage and wealth. I really did not understand my health because I really didn't understand that there was a difference between my health, my wellness, and my fitness. So this whole world opened up for me, and as I went on that journey, I totally shifted my life. And then I go on to tell the story, and I go on to tell you how I came out of it. Now, as I tell you the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and if I continue the story, I will tell you that I ended up financially free. I became a six-figure earner. I became a multiple six-figure earner, and I went on to earn, a significant amount of income and totally changed my life around. Now, as I tell that story, the end only has a true impact because you got the beginning, you got the fall from grace, you saw me pick myself up, and you saw me rise again. So I went from victim to hero. And in unleashing the power of my story, I've told you a lot about who I am. And if someone was in the same situation, and I know there's people watching that were in the situation, they're probably thinking, if she knows how to do this, I need to hook my cart to her wagon and I need to go on the journey with her. Because if I can learn what she did and she can teach me, I can get out of my situation too. Now, this is the interesting thing. I haven't sold you anything yet. The only thing I've sold you is a story. I've unleashed the power of my story, but I've done it in such a way that I've taught you how to tell the story in a way that has you get to know me, but it has you get to know my courage. It has you get to know my determination. It has you get to know my strength. It has you get to know that I've also had a low. And now I've risen from that low. It helps you get to know a lot of things about me. Now, this is the beauty. I have now edified myself. I've not talked about my degrees. I've not talked about, all the things I've done. I've not really bragged on myself. I've let you into a personal part of me. Now, this is what I want to say. Why stories work is because stories paint pictures. How many of you saw me standing at the bottom of those stairs? How many of you saw the phone call and me hanging up? How many of you had an image of me sitting in front of my doctors and him telling me you're healthy but you're not well, and I'm crying and I'm devastating? See, stories paint pictures, and we step into those pictures with the character, and it touches us because stories move us emotionally. Now, why we connect with people? We connect with people who move us emotionally. We can connect with people that are vulnerable enough that we feel like we know them, we feel like we can trust them, and we actually say, I like her. That's why stories work. So why this episode is called Unleash the Power of Your Story is like me, you have a story. And a big part of any sales process, the big part of any presentation, the big part of any post, as Deborah so eloquently taught us last week, is your relatedness and your vulnerability. And remember, Deborah said that everything is a story, right? A post is a story. An email is a little bit of a story. So if you and I want to enroll people and build credibility, you're going to be required to unleash the power of your story or your stories, because there are different stories that give an insight to you depending on what you're trying to convey. This is a real question though. Are you willing to let people in? Because if you're going to be like when I started, where I'm going to show the world how perfect I am, it left me unrelatable and untouchable. The minute I took the stage for the first time and shared the story I just gave you a glimpse into, the world almost went from distant to close. People started talking to me and saying, "Oh my God, thank you for sharing that. I thought you were talking to me. You're telling my story. I feel like I know you. I feel like you know me. What do you do? How can I get in connection with you?" Because I let them into my world. And people won't connect with you, buy from you until they can relate to you and they feel like you've let them into their world. So let's see what the comments are. And Taria saying, even through your social media content. Taria wrote, the miracle never shows up in the package that you expected. It never does. Because if it did, you would absolutely have it. So one of the big learns for me was if I want change, to look for change in a different package, or else I'm getting the same thing I've always had, right? So awesome. Yes, there's comments that people can definitely relate. People are relating to the story. I got applause from Deborah. Thank you very much. And so this is the power of your story, right? Now, the word today is mastermind. And if you want to learn more, because I'm going to be unfolding a surprise in probably a week or so. And it's going to be an experience, right? And it's going to be experience that focuses on habits. It's going to be experience that focuses on communication. It's going to be an experience that focuses on mindset. And it's going to be an experience that is designed to help you up level your mastery. Those who click mastermind will be the first people that we have on our list that we're going to be sending out an invitation to be part of this experience. Okay, so if you haven't typed in mastermind, even if you have, do it again just to make sure, right? And there's also going to be a free gift for you, and the free gift focuses on habits, so that you can just actually begin to assess your habits. Now, why is this so important? Because one of the things I began to realize as I was in my worst of situations and when my lowest part of my life was the things I did every day, my automatic way of being, my habits. I see Taria typing mastermind. Thank you. My habits created my situation. My habits created my character. My habits created how I knew myself. And it was when I began to shift my habits, shift my thinking, shift my way of being that my world changed, right? They say that the world changes when you change. It is so true. So this experience will be the beginning of an opportunity to go on a journey of transformation and change. So make sure you type in mastermind. It is coming. We're putting on the last little touches on this experience. So it is on its way, and it's going to be on its way for those of you who have typed mastermind. So any takeaways, please let me know. What did you take away from what I presented today? What did you learn? What inspired you? And what's one thing that you can do differently? All right. How can you use story in what you're doing today? Now, stories work with our children. And our parents have told them as many stories. And the trick is to tell the stories exactly we talked about it, beginning, middle, and end, right? A lot of people call that the dip, right? Beginning, middle, and end. And there's a point where you make a change and let your children see your vulnerability, because I'll tell you, you'll become a lot more relatable. If they say, "Oh, you did that too," let them see you. Stories can work in every presentation. So don't show up and just start presenting. Allow your story to give the audience an insight into your journey, and to tell the story that has the audience believe that she's just like me. She's been on the journey I'm on. That's how you use story. Use stories in your posts and your emails, right? Because it lets people know that, oh my gosh, this person is relatable. I want to follow them because there's something about her or him that touches me, right? That's the power of stories. So begin to use it. I invite you to unleash the power of your unique story and begin to touch, move, and inspire the person you're talking with, the audience you're talking with, the person you're presenting with, that person on the other end of the phone. Don't just jump into your content. Take a moment and let people know this is who I am. This is the journey I've been on, and this is why I'm uniquely qualified to work with you, to partner with you, to walk with you. All right. Tria says, this is really good. Thank you so much, my friend. And she's like, as you were talking, I started framing my story as well. Ah, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, thank you for joining us. This was Mindset Mastery, our Thursday night get together. Today we focused on communication mastery, which is one of the areas of mastery that I think is so important. Next week, I will be back. My guest next week is business strategist, Mr. Brent Simpson. Oh my goodness, that is going to be a conversation. You definitely want to be present for that conversation. I call him my big brained brother, really smart, right? My big brain brother, I know he's going to be dropping some nuggets, some brilliance, some things that you're going to be able to act on and move with. So schedule 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in your calendar right now. Because you will want to be writing mastermind when as I interview and have a beautiful conversation with this brother. So Mr. Brent Simpson will be here with me next week. Again, my name is Suzanne Hart, Fit, Fab, and Fulfilled, and we are talking mindset mastery. Have a blessed week. I will see you back here next Thursday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.